Aujourd'hui, on a cinquième séminaire de 2017-2018. On va pour les 6 séminaires de Fangchun. Et ils vont parler en anglais. Et je vais parler aussi, début de parler en anglais. They are going to talk about the teacher's knowledge with their practice, with resource, addressing this issue from documental approach to didactic, combining with instrumental approach and model. I have first I will apologize because at the end I will have to get out very quick.
At 4.
At 4, okay? We'll give the word to function.
So you have to
Start.
Okay.
Bonjour, my name is Fangchun Ulises, and I'm from Lyon and East China Normal University. And today's presentation, my topic is about the type of mathematics tasks with dynamic geometry software and its orchestration. I will show some examples from ANS and GNOME. I used the following theoretical framework. The first one is the documentation approach to didactics, and the second is instrumental orchestration.
Hello, my name is Ulises Salinas. I'm a PhD student from Mexico, from the Simvestal. And my research topic, for this presentation, I entitled my work as Analysis of the Teacher Practice by Networking of Theories, and the Resource System as Analysis category. It's a case study. And I used two theoretical frameworks, the historical epistemology, but models by Bartowski, and also the documentation approach to didactic. Well, what is the purpose of use this approach in both of our presentation is to analyze the interaction between mathematics teachers and resources and their consequences for professional growth in two different contexts, in dynamic geometry and physics. Well, the general diagram that I think everyone already knows, it's about the document, how the document is built by resources and the schemes of utilization. And in our presentation, we are going to try to use one of these elements in order to try to explain the teacher practice.
Okay. Through the resource and real class observation, in my research, I will show the examples from France, and I focus on the technology, especially the dynamic geometry software, and supported by instrumental orchestration. I want to analyze the integration of dynamic geometry software into mathematics classes, and focus on the teacher's pedagogical knowledge, which is shown in teachers' activities with dynamic geometry software, how they choose the different tasks, and how they orchestration the class teaching practice.
And well, my objectives are also in real class observation. I focus on science, gestures to diagrams, and also action and technology. As I already said, using two different frameworks, the Bartowski approach and the Udet and Trush approach, to analyze this process where the teachers structure their knowledge into a model with didactical aims, and principally focus on the process teachers structure their knowledge. It could be the content knowledge and didactical knowledge into a model with didactical aims.
The next is my own research. The types of mathematics tasks with dynamic geometry software and its orchestration. I will show you examples from Hans and Knopf. I will call supervisor Sophie Lavagny and Binyan Xu. In the presentation, I focus on the integration of dynamic geometry software into mathematics lessons, and I focus on two critical elements in classroom. The first one is teacher, and the second one is their knowledge. Teacher's knowledge, for me, can be shown in their choice of different types of tasks and their orchestration of instruments. For example, in my presentation, the instrument is dynamic geometry software and the tasks. And I will show two examples of real classroom practice from Hans and Knopf. And the type of mathematics task is based on the role dynamic geometry software played in mathematics teaching and learning. The first one is dynamic geometry is like an amplifier of paper and a pencil. And I will show some examples of this type of task. For example, in this task, we can see in a triangle, the three heads always cross through one point, and the student can drag any point of this triangle and see in all the contexts, the three lines always cross in one point, and which make students learn the geometry properties easy to find the different geometry properties. And the next important role for dynamic geometry is it can create new tasks for both by limiting the tools which can be used to solve problems and create new problem context. For example, in this task, we can require students to reconstruct the same figures, which if I drag this point and and the students need to reconstruct the same dynamic figures by software, and this task cannot be solved without the software.
What is the question?
To reconstruct the same figures. And the instrumental orchestration, it is about how teachers want to organize the class teaching with different kinds of artifacts available in learning environment in order to help students learning mathematics. There are three different elements in this theoretical framework: a didactic configuration, an exploitation mode, and didactical performance. And in my presentation, I just focus on the first two elements: didactic configuration, which is the process of teachers to choose and the use of mathematics tasks with software in the classroom, and how to configure them in his teaching practice. And the exploitation mode is the sequence of the task teachers show to the student and the role mathematics software play. And here we can see the one example of French teachers who comes from secondary school mathematics teacher. This class is for grade 4 students, about 20 students in this class. And the teacher Martin used GeoGebra in his class. This class was held in general classroom, so there is only one computer in this classroom, and only Martin can control the software. Resources Martin used in this lesson is the paper models like these models. He at first he showed the models. He showed the paper models to the student and asks the student to imagine what is the original solid of this net of this net of solids. For example, he can fold these models to construct a cube and open it to let the student know what is the net of a cube. And the role dynamic geometry software played was more like a project to present tasks. Because of there is only one computer in this classroom, so Martin just used it for present different tasks. And for this task, Martin used one important tools to control the moving process. It's the sliders. I can show the examples of his class. In this task, it's about the net of different net of cube, and for using the sliders, we can see the different type of pattern. There are 11 patterns in this task, and use the second sliders. The students can see the process of opening the cube. And by using the sliders, Martin can control what he wanted the student to see, and which part of the geometry figures to move. For example, we can't move the point of this cube, only can move the sliders. And when he shows these tasks, Martin seldom asks the students to think about what will happen, and the students can't decide how to move the different figures, which means the whole moving process was controlled by Martin, not the student. And sliders were used in all the tasks. With it, this Martin can prepare what he wanted to move and what students could see with the dynamic geometry. And next, this example is one teacher development program, and 17 teachers was attended to this program, and Martin is also the teacher educator. We can see the sliders also used in all the tasks in this program. Martin wanted to teach other teachers how to use sliders in their classroom, just like what I shown before. And in these programs, the task boîte noire, which is similar as I see the second type of mathematics tasks with dynamic geometries. It's like that. Sorry, it's too slow. I think it's slow. Maybe it's too slow to open the software. I don't know why. I can try it. And in this task, the teacher needs to reconstruct the square, but if I drag point B in the first square, the shape is not changing. It's always the square. But when I drag point G, we can see it's changed the shape, and point G is moving just along the line GE. Not I can't drag it out of it. And in the third point, in the third square, if I move the same point, it also changed the shape, but point N is not moving. And if I move point N, it's also the point M is not moving. And we can see the different requirement of if I move different points, the shape will change. And the teachers need to reconstruct the same figures. So we can see in both in Martin's class and in this teacher development program. He used similar task both in these two classes. All of the tasks he used sliders, and he also wanted other teachers to use it. And the second example of mathematics teachers is from Google Note. It's for grade 6, about 17 students in this class. And it was held in a computer room, so each student can operate their own computer to finish the task. There are about 6 tasks in this class, and it was divided into 2 parts. The first 3, 1, 2, 3 task is for all the students, which means the students need to solve all the 3 tasks, and the last 3 one is for those who finished the first part and who is good at mathematics. The students were required to construct the symmetry figures, and the point can be dragged to judge the results the students meet. Louis decided which part could be dragged and which one cannot move without using sliders. I can show the task. This is the first slide, the first task. We can move these 4 points, but we can't move this line. And the student can use to make lines. And when they finish the task, they can drag this point to see if the symmetry point is right, is be good constructed. And Louis changed the tools to solve the problem. Like in the next task, we cannot use the same tools to construct perpendicular lines. Yes, in the first task we can use this tool, but in the second one we can't use it. And in the next, for example, in the exercise 4, we can only use this tool to construct symmetry figures. For example, the student need to measure these angles A, and then to construct the same angle. And then he can do the same way. the same way to measure the angle B and make the same angle. And then they can find the last point. And if I drag point C, we can see point D is also moving according to point C. So the role of dynamic geometry software in his lesson is creating new tasks by limiting the tools which can be used. So when students finishing different tasks, they need to change their strategy to suitable for the different tools they can use. And this is a simple conclusion. In Markdown's lesson, the task dynamic geometry software is more like an amplifier to paper and pencil. We can see the sliders is used to control the moving point and process. But in Louis' class, dynamic geometry changed the way students construct the objects by limiting the tools. And the way Markdown orchestrates his teaching process is a more like a teacher-centered way to use dynamic geometry, which means Markdown control all the teaching process. The student cannot decide it which part of the geometry figures can be moved. And in Louis' class, it's more like a student-centered, which means the students can decide what to do and how to solve the problems. And another differences between these two classes, when Markdown answered the questions, he answered one student, and after he answered the questions individually, which means one student and then another student. Only when he need to explain the requirements of a task, he answered or he said to all the students. But when Louis answered the question, he made the students in one group, and he showed the solving process to this group of students, not only one student. And I think there are some important questions need to be further studied. The first one is why the teachers use sliders into the software. Maybe their objective is to control the activities and make students learn as they prepared before the lesson. Students can only move as the sliders design, which means he can only move the sliders, not the pictures, and not the objects. And we can see that in the type of tasks, we have 4 types of different mathematics tasks. And we also can divide the teacher's orchestration in different way. For example, the teacher-centered and the student-centered, or something like that. Maybe there is maybe one teacher can use software to create new tasks, but when they teach, they may use the software as a projector to just present the task, not let the students to use software to solving the problems. And the interaction between mathematics teachers and the resources in my research is the different strategies to use dynamic geometry software. For example, in my presentation, Markdown use sliders, and all the dragging activities are decided by him, not by the student. But in Louis' class, he also decided which part can be moved. But during the solving process, the student can decide what to do in order to solve the task. That's my presentation. Yes.
This is
Well, my project is guided by Luis Moreno Armella and Isaías Miranda, both from Mexico, from the institution that I studied. And well, this is the content of my presentation. There are the different parts that I'm going to go through. And well, for me it's important to start how did we get to the present project. So in previous research, we were interested in analyzing how students understand it on a specific concept on physics. Particularly this work was reported in last evening. And for that project, we used the objectivation theory, the theory of objectivation, and whom where the students, it's like the principal focus of for the research. Here you can see the one quote from Radford, and if you see in that quote, you can see the nature of the knowledge. That is a sociocultural knowledge, that is the knowledge that the students encounter in their classes. But if you saw in the last quote, only mention the role of the students. But in this meaning produced process, we asked what is the role of the teacher. That's how our previous work led us to focus on teacher practice, and particular on different profile of teachers, on experienced teacher and experienced teacher. Our aim is to analyze the difference and similarities in the practice of these two types of teachers, of two profiles of teachers, through their models. This world of models I'm going to talk about a little bit later with my framework. And also, as a complementary aim, we want to analyze the use of resources, an element to determine the expertise of a teacher. As I already say, the framework for this project is the historical epistemology by Bartowski and the documental approach to didactic. Also, how we connect these two projects with these two theories, we do by networking of theories, and that for us it could be a good way to connect to these two theoretical frameworks in order to get more information, to get more tools to analyze the teacher practice. Important notion in actually these two frameworks, theoretical frameworks, is the notion of semiotic mediation. Here you can see two quotes. The first one is about how everyone access to the knowledge. Actually, the access to the knowledge is not directly. You need something to get access to the knowledge. In particular, to mathematical objects, for example, or scientific concepts. And the second one, it's about how this knowledge is developed, about from the use of mediators that are cultural and social constructed. A little bit something about the models. I wanted to write these particular things that I found important in order to try to understand this theory. And well, what Bartowski says is that human beings create the means of their own cognition, that is to say, the artifacts. The artifact is the ways that we can use, and it's explain what we do, what we want, what we hope for. It's the things that we use in order to interact with others, and also the artifacts create the models. That's the artifacts are the things that create the models, and it's the way that we can. Well, I'm going to read the third one. For example, the model is a putative mode of action. It's a representation of a prospective practice or of acquired modes of actions. And the last one is actually the most important, that it's actually what is connected with our research. That is, the model is taken to be a construction in which we organize samples of our experience or our thought. In such way, we effect a systematic representation of these experiences of thought, and particularly that is connected with the role of the teacher as a means of understanding or explaining it to others. Here's the methodology. It's a qualitative study through case study, and we conducted a no participative observation. The participants were two teachers, one inexperienced teacher and an experienced teacher. Both were from the subject of physics at the same level of high school at 11th grade. The inexperienced teacher, at the time of we collect data, had an experience of 1 year, and the experienced teacher at that time had an experience of over 30 years. Well, at the first moment, we named them as inexperienced and also as experienced, in order not to say novice and expertise teacher in that moment, because one teacher could has a lot of experience, but maybe that teacher could not be an expert teacher. So in that time, before the analysis, before the data analysis, we name it as in this way. To the novice teacher, we video record him twice. The first one, like 3 years ago, and the second one just a few months ago. Also, after 2 video recorder sessions, we interviewed him in order to get more data about what he did during his practice. For the experienced teacher, only we video record them only once during 1 month. Now I am going to show some results. particularly, this is a moment during an activity. The students were solving a kinematics exercise about free fall, and some question about the concept of the gravity comes up from one student, and here's the one excerpt of what the teacher did in order to try to explain the sign of the quantity of the gravity.
El volumen del YouTube.
Only with subtitles.
No, I can.
No. So, well, at this first moment, the teacher tried to explain the sign of the, I don't know if you could read the subtitles. In this first video, what the teacher said is that the gravity is negative because it goes down. And actually it's the only thing that he said. But for the students that were solving an exercise, but actually it was an ambiguity because the teacher says that the gravity is negative, but you could use it as positive. But for that moment, you are going to use it positive. So one student asked what happens if they use the negative sign of the gravity. What happens in the resolution of the exercise? So the teacher tried to give more information about this concept, and he says this. Usually one student asked what happened if you can see that actually he said that it will be always negative. In that part, he incorporated the concept of reference system, actually because he realized that he needs something in order to try to explain the concept. And of course, the sign of the vector, actually it was a vector what he tried to explain. But the way that he used, for example, the reference system is only as the orientation of the Cartesian plane that actually we use in mathematics, for example. But he didn't say that, for example, the orientation in physics you could change the orientation in the Cartesian plane. he only said that because an object goes down, and because in the Cartesian plane to down is negative, that's why the sign of the quantity of the gravity is going to be negative, because it's like in the way that the movement goes. So here's a little bit a discussion. The most important thing here is that actually the concept of reference system it's not integrated in his resource system. He tried to use it, but he didn't could do it, because actually the notion of the concept of the reference system is not as he said. He tried to use it, but in that time he couldn't do it. And for example, the last one, it is observed that the teacher determines the reference system from the system of coordinate axes, the Cartesian graph, and its usual direction, positive up and to the right, and negative down and to the left. He didn't realize that in physics you can change this direction to your own purposes in order to try to explain the movement of any object. After 2 years and 3 months later, I video recorded him again, and he still was using the concept of the reference system as he used it 2 years ago. You can see actually that he said that any object that goes up is going to has positive signs, and any object that is going to be down is going to has negative signs. And here he says that the sign of the vector quantity is going to give you the orientation, and the movement is going to be actually connected with this orientation. On the other hand, to the expert teacher, only I'm going to show some pictures about how he used the concept of reference systems. For example, as a result and as a knowledge about this concept. For example, actually the expert teacher taught dynamics, and the novice teacher taught only kinematics, even when the curricula says that in this grade the teacher has to teach dynamics. In the first picture, expert teacher write an exercise with an object, with one object is moving opposite to the reference systems, and the teacher asks what is the sign of some concept, and one student says that is positive because goes to the right, and the teacher says that it's negative because the object is moving in the other way, that is your reference systems. Here we can see how actually the teacher is using the reference system. Here the teachers say to the students that they have to pay attention to the reference systems. Actually, he says with these exactly words. And actually, these teachers goes further. He arrived to the use of vectors. That actually it's it's the element that can give you the orientation. In about another resources, the expert teacher used, for example, videos to try to explain, for example, the first law of Newton, that is about the concept of reference systems. even the use of the whiteboard. While the novice teacher only write in the whiteboard equations, the expert teacher write on the whiteboard another things, as diagrams, as words, as another things in order to try to explain what he's teaching. Here you can say that the teacher made a diagram, draw a diagram where is a graph where how do you say in English? Sorry, that was the word. The point of
In Spanish?
yeah, intersection. No, the concavity change. Yeah, yeah, the where point where the concavity change. Yeah, point of inflection. Yeah, sorry. Point of inflection, and actually he tried to explain what is going to be this point of inflection, and he put to the students to do an experiment. Then the students used a software, and then the teacher also took again this concept of point of inflection, and he explained it what this point of inflection means. So you can see how many resources actually he get involved in order to only one concept, that is the concept of reference system. For conclusion, the analysis due the cultural and historical nature of knowledge reveals the importance of mediation through activity. The activity is where this everything occurs, and where the use of the artifacts and gesture is placed, as well as the use of resources in teacher practice to promote awareness in students concerning the meaning of concept. We observed a difference in the practice of these two teachers. As I said, each addressed a different content. The experienced teacher arrived to the dynamics, Newton dynamics, while the inexperienced teacher stayed in kinematics. That is only a description of the movement. You don't give reason of how this movement is happening. That's why the teacher have to teach dynamics in order to get to the students the reason of how you can analyze a movement. And finally, we must consider the use of software, the artifact by experienced teacher. A quotation of Radford notes that digital artifacts are complex objects that carry historical meanings. They are more than providers of place to experiment, and these artifacts deeply and distinctively affect the meanings the students create by suggesting defining ways of action and reflection. They also affect the potential lines of social and cognitive development. So it is important the use by the teacher of this kind of resources in order to give the students more resources in order to deal, to solve specific problems.
For me, from the Ulises research, it's both to compare different practice between novice teachers and expert teachers. It's also because in my presentation, the two teachers are all the expert teachers who is very familiar with the geometry software. They had used it for a long time, and I didn't know the novice teachers practice with dynamic geometry software. And I think I can also construct different ways or models of the strategies which teachers use dynamic geometry software.
And well, for me, I found the analysis of teacher-centered and student-centered as a complementary and important element to analyze teacher practices. Because actually, for example, in my case, the novice teacher or the experienced teacher was more teacher-centered. He was the teacher who during his classes only teach, and he didn't put their students in order to, for example, work in groups or something like that. And the experienced teacher in my case was the one who give the students more freedom, something like that, in order to let them try to solve the exercises or the problems. Also, it is important the different use of the technology, for example, to create new strategies, and for example, for simulation. This both could be used in specific parts, in specific times during the classes, depending on the objectives of, for example, what the teacher wants to teach. Well, here's some examples.
Thanks.
Thank you.
We start the discussion, and afterward I make some open for questions, remarks. So I will start with the question. Now, I was wondering, this is about the expert teacher, how he uses his own body, the movement. It seems by the picture, I don't know in fact, because it's not a video, but how he uses his own body as a resource to show the relation between the system and the design of the movement.
Yeah.
How you see this as a...
Actually, during his classes, he was very mobile. I don't know he moved a lot. He used a lot of gestures, as you say, but also, as you say, his body. For example, it was one time when he stayed in order to try to explain, for example, the concept of the origin. And for example, he put another student in another place, and he put other student in the opposite place. And actually, what he said is that, for example, he was the origin, and how these two students was going to see him, in order to see the direction from this origin. I mean, he used his body and his very often in his classes, and not only his body. He tried to interact with the other students. He promotes the use of the students' body. for example, with vectors, it was one time when he put two students in order to, how to say, the opposite of push. Try, yeah. No, to pull. And it was one student at the center and two students take him by the hands, and he tried to show to the student that was at the center, if the other students pull him, where is going to go the students that was at the center, in order to see like actually the sum of vectors.
I tried to ask in English, but that need help. We don't help. Okay. So it's very interesting, but I have some questions about the methodological point of view and theoretical point of view. For example, did you do some video confrontation to understand why the expert teacher spend more time to work this concept or not?
Video
Video confrontation, I don't know, auto confrontation.
with the teacher?
Yes, with the teacher.
No, I made a interview
Yes,
with.
interview.
Yes.
Yes.
I did it with the inexperienced teacher, but with the experienced teacher, it's to be done. It's to be done in future because
Okay.
yeah.
You did it with the expert or with the novice?
The experience.
Expert.
Expert. Yeah.
Expert.
Okay.
Yeah.
And why he said something like, I saw that teachers, all the students have always difficulty with this concept. What elements in his document or in his trajectory that justify that they spend more time than other teacher? Tu vois, quelle est la...
Yeah, actually, yeah.
Tu comprends la question? En fait, la question c'est... Je vais le dire en français parce que ça va être mieux. Hein. Donc la question c'est quels éléments soutiennent le fait qu'il passe plus de temps à travailler ce concept et à utiliser plusieurs ressources en fait? Est-ce qu'il y a des éléments qui répondent à ça? Je sais pas, dans son travail. Je sais pas. Quelqu'un fait la traduction parce qu'il...
Do you have any evidence or some extra?
Like evidence of what the teacher
extra
did.
of the videos that can prove the teacher, this teacher spend more time
In
on
more resources.
or some more resources on the explanation of this concept than the other teacher.
Than the
other one.
novice?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
For example, during the time that the teacher, because for example the novice teacher went very fast.
Mm-hmm.
Only actually, what the novice teacher only put his students only to do exercises,
Mm-hmm.
and then he only checked the correct answer. But the expert teacher actually was slower,
Yeah.
and he paid more attention actually to the concept, not to the exercise solved, exercise only solution. He paid more attention about what the concept means.
Okay. And did you ask why? I think it's
No, I want to ask.
Okay.
Yeah.
the second question is about the framework of how Warstowski. I don't know the name.
Yeah.
And because I was wondering you speak about artifacts, and you use approach to didactics, to documentational approach, and the resource, the artifacts, and why do you not use, for example, artifacts from Habardell, that's the same in framework, so
Yeah.
something like that.
Actually, what I found is actually the documental approach of the graphic is very connected with this semiotic point of view and the mediation. And actually, I started using another theory. I was using the theory of objectivation by Radford,
Okay.
but I had to make some change on my research for some reason, and then my new supervisor is working with the use of models by Bartowski, that it's also very close with Radford, and in this theory is based on also Vygotsky ideas and Leontiev ideas about the activity and the mediation. And in this theory, actually, we use this theory in order to try to analyze what the activity of the teacher practice. But for example, in particular, the theory of objectivation is like, I see as more focus on the students. Of course, also the theory of objectivation says that the teachers and the students and the artifacts, everything are together inside of the classroom. But I in that time I thought that I needed something in order to analyze the teacher practice. That's why I actually use the theory of resources. But for example, the use of schemes is also very close with the notion of models.
Yes,
And the resources are the artifacts. And for example, the reason why the reason that the teacher has, or the teacher have, in order to try to deal with some problem, I think it could be explained from both frames, both frames. But I use the theory of Bartowski as my main framework, but this theory is not actually a didactical theory. It's trying to explain how, for example, the knowledge is developed, how actually the humans construct their own artifacts, and these artifacts also are modes of actions, and these artifacts also has knowledge. But it's not a didactical theory. That's what I actually, to be honest, is that I cannot skip the Bartowski idea because of my supervisors.
Very honest. I can understand.
Yeah.
Oh.
I can understand. No, not because of you. Question?
There's a question from Sibel. If you want. Karima aussi, une question.
Salut Matin.
Resume the question of VC.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
C'est qui
Bonjour.
ça Sibel
Bonjour, c'est Karima. C'est vrai? C'est vrai?
Can I speak?
Yes.
Okay. So my question is Zoom, but I think that Sophie can help us, because I was thinking about competence related to dynamic geometry. I mean, when we discuss about how prospective teachers or experienced teachers are working with dynamic geometry, I was thinking about if we are talking about competence for dynamic geometry. I mean, how we can consider a teacher as a teacher who developed competence to teach with dynamic geometry or not. This is my point. If we can relate it to this kind of discussion with competence, because I have already read some texts about how teachers use dynamic geometry, but I didn't recognize something related to competence. If we can talk in these terms when we are analyzing this kind of tests.
Because I was directly asked. But I think if we want to talk about competences, we have to define what is competences. And as a researcher, I didn't work really on the competence definition. As a teacher educator, I had to, and it's a very complicated field. A lot of work has been done on education about competence with two separate views on what is competence. On a view, competence is something very large, expert skills, I don't know, and on another point of view, competence are more little piece of knowledge and way to use the knowledge. But I will let that on one side, because in mathematics didactics, in the French framework, we don't really work with competence. And that's why I would say we don't use that. We talk about teacher's knowledge, maybe teacher's expertise, instrumental genesis and orchestration, and all this way to address what is doing the teacher in the class and outside the class. So it could be a work, but first we have to decide what is work. But if we avoid the question of describing the teacher's knowledge through competence, then we can use other criteria like the type of task they are using, or like how they drag a dynamic geometry figure in the class, or all other kind of elements that Fangchun is trying to.
But what if Sibel changed the word competence into
It's
expert?
Sibel or Karima?
Sibel.
It is Sibel.
What if she changed the word competence into expertise?
But then we have to define what is expertise.
Yes.
And I will make the question in the other way to the two, how do we say?
Ulises.
The two, no, our
Speakers.
of today. Is you use the Fangchun term, but you also use it student-centered or teacher-centered way to interact. So it is not just teacher-centered what? Okay, for instance, way to interact with the pupil during the, or way to interact with the dynamic geometry, or we have to define that. And then it could be element of expertise. I'm not sure that the expertise of the teacher or the competence of a teacher is just one side pupil or student-centered, and non-expertise is teacher-centered way to do it. So I'm sorry, I don't answer very well. And the last point I can say, we have tools to describe knowledge in didactics of mathematics. And we can continue to work with these tools, which are schemes and the concepts from Vidéo, I would say, and for what, as far as I'm concerned, I would say, we will be continue to work with that elements, and it's complicated to change frameworks at any time.
Non, il y a puis aussi Karima.
it becomes difficult for me to talk about my point because Sophie talked a little bit about it. My question was about the two different classes. They had one computer in one class and 6 computers in one class.
17.
17.
Yeah.
17.
Each student have one computer.
Yes. Alors, the point is for me, in the class where we have one computer, it's a Martin class, the teacher is using the computer.
Yeah.
He's showing.
Yeah.
He's doing the work to bring students to understand or to see what he is trying to explain. But in the other class, students are practicing. It seems that learning is student-centered.
Yeah.
They are themselves trying to see how to understand or how to see things or how to understand what the teacher is trying to explain the knowledge or something like that. My point is that during this class, is there a moment where the teacher talk directly to the students only?
Yeah. You mean
without using the software, talking to them to know at what point they understand or what are their position faced to this exercise?
Yes. After each exercise, the teachers make conclusion to the student about the knowledge they need to understand. I don't know. Yes. Why I think this lesson is more about teacher-centered is when the teachers operate the software, he seldom asks questions for the students. He just says that we can see if I drag the slider and the cube can be open like that, and we also can change the type of net. He didn't ask questions to the student, so maybe the student cannot decided what to do to solve the problem.
Maybe I can add some element along YouTube.
Mais Karima aussi, Véronica, est-ce que tu tiens compte des gens loin?
Ça va. C'est Karima un peu, mais elle n'a pas réponse.
Yeah.
Comment ça va bien?
Bon, bah,
As for the first question, I didn't really understand what do you mean about analyze the resources. You mean the
Karima, if you want, you can talk by connecting the mic.
Yeah?
Yeah,
Hello?
it works. Yes.
Karima?
Before the pictures in the classroom, did you have an interview or analyze this resource before using in the classroom?
No, I didn't.
I explain again. The teacher prepared his resource before.
Yeah.
Did you see this, analyze this resource before, or just in the practice, in the classroom?
Just in the practice, not before the class.
So how you can make, I can't see the difference, but how you can make the, yeah, I can see the difference between what he prepares and what he make exactly in the class, in the classroom. I think that all the teachers know this or not, experiment have to prepare his work before do it in the class. Is it in your case the teachers doesn't prepare anything, especially using GeoGebra, until using into the classroom? You don't make any preparation.
Can you answer? I think Karima, I think there is something that is not clear, easy to understand. Of course, the teacher. No, I get your question, but of course the teacher has prepared a lot, because all what has been done couldn't be like that when he enters the class. So he has made a huge work to prepare. Yeah. But Fangchun didn't get this work of preparation before he entered in the class for organization purpose. So then there is two elements we can do. We can still make a priori analysis of the resources. And on the other side, we can also interview the teacher about what happened and what he expects or not before the class, which is a part of the protocol that should have been done and was not. But it is not because you didn't get the resources before the class that you cannot produce any a priori analysis of the resource.
And if it's like this, what about orchestration? Is the orchestration just analyzed during the practice?
The orchestration is not analyzed.
Just some elements about different aspects of the discussion. First of all, about artifacts. And there is different frameworks for analyzing, deciding what is an artifact or not. And I think the frame of Wartowski is very interesting, and you should perhaps share a paper from Wartowski with the team, Ulises, so that things will be clearer for everybody. And actually, there is an interest for having a very accurate definition of things. And it is not only an abstract necessity, but it's a necessity for discussing the team, for analyzing things and crossing analysis. And my second point is about to be very accurate in using concept. For example, orchestration for function. For me, and Rosie could also speak on this point. For me, orchestration is not only something to arrange the space and artifacts and people. Orchestration is a way of thinking about a specific situation. You have a situation for teaching or for learning something, and orchestration is a way with this objective to organize people and artifacts. So, for me, it's impossible to speak up about orchestration in an abstract manner. The teacher has an objective for teaching something, and in this objective he will decide to have different stage in her teaching during 1 hour, and for each stage perhaps he will have different configurations and different exploitation modes. And for me it was very difficult to understand from your talk what were precisely those configurations. You have explained very clearly for the use of the software how the teacher was organizing things, but there is not only the software. For example, in the talk, the Ulises talk, there is gestures, organization of the classroom, students working with 1, 2 computers and different moments and different way of organizing things. So it's also for answering to Kalima, even if we do not know nothing about what happens before, it's possible to say something about an orchestration. But you have to present things very clearly. For me, it's difficult to understand what happened and what was the competencies or teacher's knowledge beyond what he was. So when you use concept, be very, very accurate for analyzing the mathematical situation, teacher organization, and so it was the second point. The third point was about resources, because for me, my idea of documentation approach, I need to know what the teacher has for organizing things. For example, your teachers about geometry. What does he use ordinarily? Is there a very huge step between what he's doing ordinarily and this activity? You know, what are finally his own resources for managing things in the classroom? And it's not so easy. It's the same question for Ulises. So you evidence a lot of resources of very different level, gestures, theoretical resources, etc. But for each teacher, what were do you know which was a resource system on a theoretical level? We don't know if he is very familiar with these topics to be taught. You know. Finally, you see, sometimes we know that teachers could be very strong because they know a lot of things about this topic, and they taught this topic for 20 years. And even if the novice teacher, sometimes a novice teacher knows a lot of things about this topic because during his study in university it was his favorite thing, so he know a lot of, he's able to mobilize a lot of resources because he's very strong on this theoretical basis. So we need to know more about what the teacher should be, could do on this subject in this moment. So, but I was very impressed by your two contributions, but in some sense they are very complementary from the consideration of what is the resources, what is the classroom organization. In your way, Ulises, we had a very wide image of what happens in the classroom, and in your presentation, content was more software itself. And I follow Sophie also when I think that teacher-centered and student-centered is very, very vague. You should analyze perhaps more depth what's at stake in this.
Can I say just about the teacher center and student center? I think this kind of thing can be also analyzed from the perspective of mathematical knowledge which is developed in the classroom. Because it's not only the teacher's organization of the classroom, but also there are some student activity and student knowledge there. Because even though the student use the computer by yourself and you have some activities, according to the nature of the task, the activity might be very different. So, for example, in that case, the second one, it is very interesting because there is some kind of feedback. The teacher puts some constraint, the restriction for the use of the software, and it allows the student to use new knowledge. But of course, sometimes even the student explore by themselves, they don't have this kind of constraint. So in that sense, in the how I say, in the student's activity and also the analysis of the tasks. So probably you can differentiate different kind of the organization.
Question? I would like to make a comment about Ulises' presentation. I was very interested by this idea of model. I don't know very well Martovsky work and theoretical framework, but what you have said seems very coherent with a way to describe the situation of at least the non-expert teacher. And for me, it seems that he mixed two different models when he tried to explain things about. It's too old, the time I learned physics, but I was very surprised with negative gravity. I said something is surprising, but then I used my own model of analyzing geometry and geometrical knowledge. And in mathematics, we make the different. There's two ways to look at our environment and to use our mathematical knowledge. From one side, there is a geometrical set of knowledge and concept, and on the other way is spatial relationships. And in English, we say the connaissance, not in English, way. Spatial knowledge and space interaction with space, and we have begun to describe how to make the difference between the two and how one is used to learn the other set of knowledge. And we could analyze what tried to explain the novice teacher by the fact that he don't see the two kinds of model, and he tried to explain something he knows, and he supposes that the student knows about gravity by their own experience with the environment, that here this direction is down and this direction is up, and that when you look at the boards, there is an up direction and down direction, so your diagram is oriented by the environment around, which has nothing to do with geometry, because geometry there is not up and down, and which is very different from the physical models with reference and I don't know in English, but a set of vectors. And gravity may be a vector with negative sense negative from the G, or I don't know, the other vector you choose. Okay, and so is the Bartowski idea of model going this way to explain what happened for these teachers?
Yeah,
or
actually,
not?
yeah, I think yes, because it's how, I think as you said, it's how everyone says, how, for example, me, what is my experience of the work, for example, and how this experience I transmit to others. So what this is that every teacher has their own model.
But has many different models, not just one. Has a model belonging to the physics, and even maybe different set of knowledge inside physics. You said dynamics or kinetics.
Yeah.
You could analyze it as two not connected for this young teacher, but two sets of knowledge. And for the oldest or more experienced, it is more unified, so it can connect. We have not only one set model to explain.
Yeah, well, we pretend to say what is the model to deal with specific concept that
I would say we don't have a single model.
Yeah.
We have several, as Balashev said, we have several set of conception. And in our life, we often don't need to put the two together to see how they work together or not. We can behave this way when we are a teacher and this way when we are a researcher. This way when we are at home as for instance, cooking and don't taking care of chemical properties. And when we are researcher, we look at the same thing but with other set of knowledge. And when we are teacher, it's also the case. No? No, sorry, it's more comment like, but I was
epistemological comment.
No, didactical.
Yes.
We have a set of concepts to deal with that aspect. If we take a new set of concepts, we take a lot of theoretical framework. Maybe before changing of theoretical, it's not because of this, but changing every time and adding new things, trying to work with one, define the object and.
I will ask to make some final words you and from me, because I will have to leave to. In fact, I think the two works have a lot to do, but it's bring a lot of different ways to work with the teacher practice and the use of instrumental orchestration to try to understand or to, in my point of view, is try to model up the teacher practice, taking into consideration the structure of the instrumental orchestration. But I think that, in fact, you work much more with the mise en œuvre or the performance to try to reach the configuration and the exploitation mode. And when you say that the teacher used this to show the students, I think you could think on how he did so. Because you call it the teacher-centered. I think it's teacher-centered interaction with the resources centered in the teacher. But with the model, I think it's also, where all the students had the model to work with. In this sense, what was the question? Is teachers' knowledge about how students learn, or teacher the condition of having one computer or having 10 computer to share or not? So all this aspect could affect teacher's knowledge of mathematics, teacher knowledge of pedagogy, of cognition, what work together to build up this configuration, to build up this exploitation mode. But I think it's a lot to do in the way. Very interesting to use the theoretical framework to understand the practice. And also this brings a very interesting work with the practice, but with another aspect that is more socio-constructivist and more integral aspects, that is in the element of practice, the element of gesture, all together, that we could take into consideration. And I have to say that it's quite interesting to work with so different culture to to try to organize. And thank you for you too. And give the
I can just add a word about what said Karima. Karima, are you still here?
J'ai pas compris, c'est Karina ou Sibelle?
C'est Karima.
Ouais, sur
Karima
compétences.
very often
Yes.
is explain. Okay, Karima, you explained that a teacher has to prepare his lesson. I don't know what exactly it means. Has. I think we have to carefully distinguish our point of view as researcher and what exactly is doing a teacher, because actually very often a teacher arrives in a classroom without having prepared explicitly something, but he has in mind a kind of habit, a child will develop something. And so I think we have not to give argument of a kind of authority. A teacher is preparing sometimes lesson with his own way of preparing things, and we have to understand what he has in mind when he begins his lesson. And so it's a methodological question for researchers, not a question for the teacher. You have to know how is it possible to understand what was the material of the teacher. And it's possible sometimes asking him how did she perform her last lesson on the same topic, or what was her model. So I don't think, but it's a point of the researcher. It's all the difficulty of our analysis, because we have not always the material for understanding things. It's the case for José quand tu regardes le travail du professeur, on est dans la classe et puis il faut qu'on comprenne what are the resources behind, the culture behind, the knowledge behind. So, et pour this, the length of, la longueur du temps est importante. N'est-ce pas, Katsiani?
Okay. Anything more? You too? Last words?
So I sent the link for the follow-up of the discussion, so it's possible for everybody to ask questions, and at each time Fangchun and Ulises have 5 minutes for answering to the question. So you have to stay on talk. And Fangchun will be back in China on Friday, so we have to ask questions before. And you, and Caesar, the next seminar is yours.
I have a question.
No, it's March.
1 minute.
Yeah.
The next seminar is March.
April.
But it's
You.
also a question
Yes.
to function and it's a question. I have a last question. What do you get, what do you obtain in your research when you consider a concept as a resource? You said somewhere, I know. You said the concept is a resource and the concept of reference or system. I would say in physics, I talked to you, but toi t'es en chimie. Moi j'étais le plus proche de la physique. Donc j'étais là, mais je comprends plus rien, sorry. But about physics, the idea of system, and then you say there is something, it's this concept which is the resource for the teacher.
Yeah, because actually...
And how can we define it from a, as you say, detailed and precise point of view? What is, it's too large for me, so what is the aspect you consider as a resource? And then, what did you obtain by considering that as a resource? But you want the definition?
Je veux dire juste une petite chose. Dans la didactique de la physique, même de la chimie ou didactique des sciences, il y a cette dialectique entre modélisation, expérimentation. Il y a beaucoup de théories qui étudient cette dialectique. Par exemple, André Tepergian, il a proposé en didactique de la physique une théorie, c'est la théorie des mondes. Dans l'apprentissage de la physique, il y a deux mondes, selon elle, monde des objets et des événements et monde des théories et des modèles. et qu'il faut faire des liens entre ces deux mondes pour arriver à, voilà, à faire apprendre le concept. Voilà. Et j'ai pas du tout entendu le mot de modélisation, par exemple, ce qui est important en physique. Donc tu traduis. Donc,
Model and modeling.
ce qui se passe sur le tableau, pour moi, c'est une modélisation pour arriver à construire un modèle, et c'est tout théorique, on va dire.
The concept.
Et il y a la différence entre théorie et expérimentation.
No, I'll try to summarize and answer. My question was about the physics and why we could consider one concept system reference as a resource. And then I turned to Mohammed, and Mohammed had the idea in physics, which is very, and in the teaching of science, there is a lot of different theoretical framework which address this idea of model and modeling. And for instance, one of these theories developed by, I show there because colleagues of us not far from here developed this idea of making a relationship between the world of object and events and the world of model and theory. And so you begin with model, and then there was no talk about modeling and all this complex
model is not
process of modeling, creating model.
Well, the word model in the theory, it's not related with modeling. The models are where everything of the activity occurs, like in a general way. The model, it's like the word, it's because it's very related with the skin. It's like the place where the activity and the artifacts occur. That is the model. And well, very quickly about the concept as resource. I say that the concept as resource is because, as for example, to solve an exercise, you can use, for example, a calculator, you can use software, you can use a machine. But in this case, even you need something that, for example, you need this concept. The reference system is something that the teacher needs in order to solve a specific problem. It's not something to be, that actually this concept has both. It's something to be understood, and it's only that you can use in order to solve another thing. I don't know.
I would say we can stop at least.
I will let you close, and I have to leave.
Okay, thank you. And you could send a paper about model to people of the seminar?
I'm not sure. You make a distinction, but I'm not sure that this distinction will stand very long if we go more in detail. And then it depends what you call concept. But we use concept to talk about knowledge, and we have Dwadi who explained us that knowledge can be tool or object. Object of knowledge that you develop its own properties and tools to solve and understand situation and solve problems. So it seems that what you explained. Yes, concept has these two aspects, but also Vernio said the concept do not exist like that. If you want to explain what is a concept, you have to say what are the problems this concept solve, what are the semiotic system you use to represent and to work with this concept, the invariant and way to operate with this concept. And once you have explained what is a concept, which is the part, which is the resource.
So
again, we make
you could exchange. You choose a paper about model, and we choose a paper about.
Je l'envoie si vous, il y a des.
Non mais son idée de modèle.
Ouais.
Non, mais elle est bien,
Ce sont des modèles et l'idée de concept vers nous. And you try to articulate, to cook this concept. Okay, that's it. Thank you very much. So we can continue the discussion via email. Okay, so Karima, thank you for your last remark. She explained that in the documentation approach there is a resource and then document. Yeah. I mean, where arrives the concept of scheme. And we finally, Karima, the discussion we have now about models and scheme and Marisol, do you want to say something? Marisol is from Investab and she will be here in 2 months. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Marisol. Perhaps, Takeshi, you could say a word about the next seminar.